All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a seriously fascinating setup, a dystopian Chicago that tried to literally eradicate human evil through extreme societal engineering. Picture this, a world that looked at the ashes of human history and decided, you know what? Political ideology and religion aren't actually the root of war. Instead, they blamed complex human personality. Their grand solution? A system demanding absolute, unyielding conformity.
To really get inside the head of this world, imagine you're 16 years old. You're strapped into a simulation chair, and a voice is screaming at you to choose how you'll react to a sudden, terrifying threat, like, say, a vicious, snarling dog. And the catch? You know perfectly well that your split-second choice in this highly stressful hallucination is going to dictate the entire rest of your life. It instantly decides your relationship with your family and your fundamental path forever.
So let's move right into Section 1, Engineering a Flawed Utopia.
The founders of this society basically believed that if you could just isolate the fatal flaws of human nature, you'd create perfect, frictionless peace. So they carved up the surviving population into 5 hyper-rigid factions, with each one totally dedicated to a single virtue. You've got abnegation, who blame selfishness, so they wear gray and run the government because they're supposedly incorruptible. Amity blames aggression. Erudite blames ignorance. Candor blames duplicity, the idea being if you literally can't lie, you can't plot a war. And finally, Dauntless blames cowardice. They're the pierced, tattooed protectors of the city. But, as you can probably guess, this extreme rigidity naturally led to massive geographical segregation and political tension. Like, abnegation sectors have these cracked, patchy roads because they see luxury as selfish, while the erudite intellectuals are actively releasing hostile reports to try and seize political control. This so-called engineered peace is actually crumbling from day one.
And looming over all of this is a terrifying alternative, becoming factionless. If you fail your chosen faction's initiation, you don't just get to go back home to your parents. Nope, you are cast out to live in extreme poverty, left doing the city's dirty work. It's a horrific cautionary tale staring every citizen right in the face. That constant, terrifying threat of poverty, that's the actual glue holding the whole system together. It literally forces everyone to conform, because the alternative is starvation.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Broken Psychological X-ray.
To enforce this absolute conformity, every citizen takes an aptitude test at age 16 to determine their one true nature before picking a permanent faction. The simulation is designed to trigger a completely binary primal reflex. When faced with that vicious dog we talked about earlier, a typical dauntless mind bypasses fear and just grabs the knife to fight. An amity mind grabs the cheese to pacify the dog. But our protagonist, a 16-year-old girl named Triss, doesn't do either. When a little girl appears in her simulation and the dog attacks, Triss actually layers these virtues. She selflessly hurls herself at the dog to protect the child. So she's exhibiting dauntless bravery, but she's doing it with an abnegation motivation.
It's like she's in a broken psychological X-ray machine. The society desperately needs this test to spit out a simple, absolute, binary answer to keep its neat little categories perfectly clean. But guess what? Human nature just refuses to operate on a binary spectrum. The human mind is a messy, overlapping web of tissue, and the test is completely unequipped to handle someone who embodies multiple virtues all at once.
Now, let's look at Section 3, the threat of divergence.
So, what exactly happens when this rigid categorization system totally fails to process a multifaceted human mind? Well, when Triss wakes up, the test administrator, a dauntless woman named Tori with a hawk tattoo, is absolutely terrified. She has to manually override the computer just to hide Triss's results. Why? Because Triss is divergent. You see, in a society that relies entirely on predictability to maintain its grip, being divergent means your mind works in multiple ways simultaneously. You can't be easily predicted, manipulated, or controlled by the state, and that makes you the ultimate systemic threat.
Triss's test didn't just show a slight leaning in one direction, it yielded an incredibly dangerous three-way tie between abnegation, dauntless, and erudite. In this world, carrying that kind of mental adaptability and complexity isn't considered a gift. It carries a literal death sentence if you're discovered. Triss is basically walking around with a radioactive secret.
Moving on to Section 4, Conditioning the Dauntless Mind.
To hide her complex nature, Triss makes a massive, shocking choice at the public blood ceremony where the governing rule is faction before blood. She cuts her hand and transfers from her quiet, safe life in abnegation over to the violent, chaotic, dauntless faction. Strategically, she's choosing the loudest, most chaotic environment possible to mask her internal complexity. But man, the transition is brutally immediate. Just to enter the Dauntless compound, initiates have to endure a highly hostile initiation. Step 1, physically run and hurl yourself onto a moving elevated train. Step 2, leap blindly off a 7-story rooftop into a pitch black hole. And Step 3, claim your new identity at the bottom, which is exactly where Beatrice renames herself Triss. This whole ordeal isn't just physical boot camp. It's a highly calculated psychological mechanism. Stripping off her gray shirt and jumping into the dark is specifically designed to bypass the brain's natural panic response, forcefully stripping away a teenager's old identity so they can be molded into a perfect cog in the machine. Once inside their underground compound, which, by the way, is a super dangerous place with uneven rock walls and a gushing underground river with 0 safety railings, we see this terrifying philosophical clash between 2 leaders over how to actually mold these new initiates. On one side, you've got Eric, an erudite transfer who just exudes this cold, calculated malice. He believes in sheer authoritarian dominance rooted in ruthlessness and fear. On the other side is For, a quiet, skilled fighter whose philosophy is an older, meritocratic ideal. He believes in honor and the idea of acting in spite of fear. This clash violently bubbles right up to the surface during a knife-throwing practice. When the ruthless Eric tries to force a gentle initiate named Al to stand right in front of a target, Triss boldly steps in to take his place. For throws the knives and intentionally nicks Triss's ear. Now, on the surface, this looks completely sadistic, but in reality, it's a deeply strategic form of protection that's perfectly disguised as cruelty. For draws just enough blood to satisfy Eric's authoritarian bloodlust and stop the bullying, while simultaneously giving Triss a platform to prove her unwavering bravery to the entire faction. As For says, bravery isn't a lack of fear, it's acting in spite of fear. And For actually embodies this ideal brilliantly during a nighttime game of Capture the Flag. He and Triss climb the rusted scaffolding of an abandoned Ferris wheel in pitch darkness to get a tactical view. For does this even though he is completely, paralyzingly terrified of heights. He's clinging to the metal, breathing heavily, but he just keeps climbing. It's a perfect illustration that true bravery isn't about not being afraid, it's about pushing forward anyway. And Triss uses this tactical advantage to weaponize her small size and actually win the game. But as Triss learns to survive in this brutal environment, we also witness a deeply disturbing psychological unspooling during combat training. She gets paired against a candor bully named Molly, and Triss doesn't just use strategy to win the fight. She takes it to an entirely different, almost scary level of brutality. After sweeping Molly's legs out from under her, Triss viciously kicks the defeated girl in the ribs, the stomach, and square in the face, breaking her nose. She mercilessly beats her opponent until For physically has to drag her off. And what's truly shocking here is that the text makes a specific point to note that Triss explicitly doesn't feel guilty about what she's done. Why is this happening to her? Well, because showing mercy in this system gets you ranked last. And if you're ranked last, you get cast out into the extreme poverty of the factionless. You are literally watching classical conditioning at its absolute most terrifying. The Dauntless system is actively and effectively rewriting a 16-year-old's moral code. Triss is being forced to actively amputate her innate empathy just to survive in a system that exclusively values brutality. It totally proves the trauma inherent in forcing a human being to deny vast parts of their own psychology. All right, let's head into Section 5. The system collapses. Just as Triss is hardening herself into a weapon, visiting day arrives, and the entire fragile structure of this engineered society begins to crack wide open. Triss's quiet, gray-clad abnegation mother shows up, and surprisingly, she intimately knows her way around the dark, railless Dauntless architecture. Why? Because she was originally born Dauntless herself. She warns Triss to hide her abilities in the middle of the pack, basically implying she knows Triss's aptitude test was inconclusive. Triss realizes her incredibly selfless mother is likely also divergent and deliberately used the quiet, head-down lifestyle of abnegation as a decades-long survival mechanism to hide from the state. Plus, her mother brings some truly dire news. The erudite intellectuals are hoarding a mysterious mind control simulation serum to launch a massive conspiracy against the abnegation leadership. The city is teetering on the brink of absolute catastrophe, and Triss's multifaceted mind makes her completely immune to the serum, meaning she is the ultimate threat to their entire conspiracy.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, our obsession with boxes.
Bringing this all back to reality, Triss's journey in this dystopian world is actually a profound mirror reflecting our own very human obsession with oversimplification. I mean, we might not have to jump off moving trains, but the psychology here is incredibly relevant to how we structure our own daily lives. Just think about how much we love to put ourselves into neat, highly predictable little boxes. At work, on social media, or in our relationships. We're constantly taking personality tests and asking ourselves these binary questions, like, are you logical or are you emotional? Are you analytical or are you creative? Are you an introvert or an extrovert? We use these labels to make the world feel safe, predictable, and just easy to understand. Much like the founders of the faction system, we really want clean categories. But the reality this explainer shows us is the immense danger of that oversimplification. True bravery is actually the willingness to embrace the absolute, messy complexity of your own identity, even when society is constantly demanding that you pick just one box and stay inside it. Because as we've seen, forcing people to amputate parts of their nature to fit a single label doesn't create peace. The faction system attempted to eradicate human evil, but by aggressively suppressing the overlapping reality of the human mind, it ended up creating the exact cruelty, deception, and ignorance it was trying to destroy. So, I want to leave you with this final thought to mull over today. Take a hard look at your own life. What parts of your own identity are you suppressing right now just to fit into the faction that your daily life demands? Keep questioning those boxes, and whatever you do, never stop embracing your own complexity.